Welcome to the Discourse Analyzer AI Toolkit, where articles come alive. You're listening to the audio version of our article. For the full text and an interactive experience, check out the link in the description below. Interact with any selection using our AI assistant to enhance your understanding. Let's explore.
Methodologies of Ecocriticism in Discourse Analysis. The methodologies of ecocriticism in discourse analysis are diverse, focusing on how language and communication shape our understanding of environmental issues. These methods range from textual analysis, which examines written texts, to conversation analysis that explores spoken language in environmental discussions. Critical discourse analysis uncovers hidden ideologies and biases in environmental texts, while multimodal discourse analysis extends the analysis to images and sounds. Other methodologies, such as corpus linguistics, narrative analysis, frame analysis, ethnographic discourse analysis, and semiotic analysis, offer unique insights into how environmental narratives are constructed and interpreted across various media and contexts. 1. Textual analysis. Textual analysis is a critical methodology used in ecocriticism and discourse analysis to study written texts for environmental themes. It involves examining language, structure, and context to uncover how texts reflect, reinforce, or challenge environmental ideologies and narratives. 1. Key principles of textual analysis in ecocriticism. Close reading. This involves a detailed analysis of language, imagery, and narrative structure in texts to understand how they portray nature and environmental issues. It aims to uncover the nuances in the portrayal of the environment and human interactions with it. Contextual understanding. Textual analysis considers the historical, cultural, and social context in which a text was created. This helps reveal how environmental themes are influenced by the time and place of the text's production. Intertextuality. This principle explores how texts relate to one another and how environmental themes evolve across different works. It helps trace the development of environmental discourse across genres and time periods. Thematic exploration. Textual analysis focuses on identifying and interpreting recurring themes related to nature, such as wilderness, pollution, sustainability, and climate change, to understand how they shape and reflect societal attitudes. 2. Application in discourse analysis. Literary texts. Analyzing literature helps uncover how authors use narrative techniques and language to convey environmental themes, revealing underlying attitudes towards nature and ecological issues. Media analysis. Studying media texts, such as news articles and documentaries, reveals how environmental issues are framed and presented to the public, influencing perception and policy. Policy documents. Examining policy text uncovers how governments and organizations discuss and prioritize environmental issues, highlighting the rhetorical strategies used to justify specific actions. Scientific reports and studies. Textual analysis of scientific literature reveals how scientists communicate complex environmental issues to different audiences, including policymakers and the general public. 3. Importance in ecocriticism and discourse analysis. Revealing ideologies and biases. Textual analysis uncovers the ideologies and biases embedded in texts, showing how they influence public perception of environmental issues. Tracing environmental narratives. It helps trace the evolution of environmental narratives over time, showing how societal attitudes towards nature have changed. Influencing environmental communication. Insights from textual analysis can guide more effective environmental communication by understanding the rhetorical strategies that resonate with different audiences. Critiquing environmental policy. Analyzing policy documents reveals how language is used to frame environmental issues, helping critique policy approaches and advocate for more effective strategies. In summary, textual analysis is a key methodology in ecocriticism and discourse analysis, providing insights into how written texts shape and reflect societal attitudes towards the environment. By uncovering the underlying narratives and ideologies in texts, it helps inform more effective environmental communication and policy. 2. Conversation analysis. Conversation analysis, CA, is a methodology used in ecocriticism and discourse analysis that examines spoken language to understand how environmental issues are discussed in natural conversations. This method focuses on the details of spoken interaction, revealing how people negotiate meaning and construct narratives in real-time dialogue. 1. Key principles of conversation analysis in ecocriticism: turn-taking and sequencing. CA studies how participants take turns in conversation and how sequences of interaction develop, revealing how environmental issues emerge and evolve in discussions. Repair mechanisms. This principle looks at how people handle misunderstandings or disagreements in conversation, which is crucial for understanding how people address conflicting views on environmental issues. Contextualization cues. CA examines verbal and nonverbal cues that provide context to conversations, helping to uncover the implicit meanings and attitudes behind environmental discussions. Preference organization. This concept involves understanding which types of responses are preferred or dispreferred in conversations, shedding light on societal norms regarding environmental issues. 2. Application in discourse analysis. Interviews and focus groups. Analyzing conversations from interviews and focus groups provides insights into how individuals articulate their views on environmental issues, revealing common themes and differences. Media discussions. Examining conversations on talk shows, podcasts, or panel discussions helps reveal how media personalities and experts frame and discuss environmental topics. Policy and community meetings. Analyzing discussions in policymaking or community meetings provides insight into how environmental issues are debated and how decisions are made. Casual conversations. Studying everyday conversations between individuals offers a glimpse into how environmental issues are discussed in informal settings, highlighting common perceptions and misconceptions. 3. Importance in ecocriticism and discourse analysis. Understanding public perception. CA reveals how everyday people talk about environmental issues, providing insights into public perceptions and attitudes. Identifying communication barriers. By studying misunderstandings and disagreements, CA can identify barriers to effective environmental communication. Analyzing rhetorical strategies. It helps analyze the rhetorical strategies people use in conversations to persuade others or justify their views on environmental topics. Informing environmental education. Insights from CA can help design more effective educational programs by understanding how people discuss and understand environmental issues. In summary, conversation analysis is a vital methodology in ecocriticism and discourse analysis that provides insights into how environmental issues are discussed in spoken language. By analyzing the dynamics of natural conversations, it helps uncover the narratives, attitudes, and rhetorical strategies that shape public perceptions of environmental challenges. 3. Critical Discourse Analysis, CDA. Ecocriticism and Critical Discourse Analysis, CDA, share a focus on understanding how language and discourse influence societal perceptions and actions, particularly in relation to environmental issues. Here's how CDA can be applied within ecocriticism to reveal the ideological underpinnings of environmental discourse. 1. Ideology and power structures. CDA examines how discourse reinforces or challenges power structures, and in the context of ecocriticism, it looks at how language perpetuates certain ideologies about nature. For instance, analyzing political speeches, media articles, or policy documents might reveal a tendency to frame nature as a resource for economic exploitation, thus reflecting an anthropocentric ideology that prioritizes human interests over environmental conservation. 2. Hidden biases. CDA helps identify biases in environmental discourse that may not be immediately obvious. For example, a news article might present certain environmental policies as too costly or ineffective, subtly pushing a narrative that economic growth is more important than ecological sustainability. Through CDA, researchers can uncover such biases and how they shape public opinion. 3. Discursive strategies. CDA involves analyzing the strategies used to construct environmental narratives, such as metaphors, euphemisms, or framing devices. For instance, describing an environmental initiative as greenwashing can imply a superficial effort, undermining the perceived value of the initiative and swaying public perception. 4. Social practices. CDA investigates how discourse both influences and is influenced by social practices. Within ecocriticism, this might involve exploring how certain linguistic practices sustain unsustainable behaviors. For example, referring to fossil fuels as affordable energy sources in official discourse can reinforce their continued use despite environmental concerns. 5. Contextual Analysis. CDA emphasizes the importance of context in understanding how discourse shapes and is shaped by society. In environmental discourse, this means considering the historical, political, and cultural contexts that influence how environmental issues are discussed. For example, the framing of climate change in different countries can vary significantly based on political ideologies and economic priorities. Using CDA within ecocriticism helps unpack the complex relationships between language, ideology, and environmental action, providing insights into how discourse influences societal responses to environmental challenges. 4. Multimodal Discourse Analysis. Multimodal Discourse Analysis, MDA, is particularly useful in ecocriticism because it helps to understand how various modes of communication combine to construct and influence environmental narratives. Here's how MDA can be utilized in ecocriticism. 1. Understanding multimodal communication. MDA recognizes that meaning is often communicated through multiple modes simultaneously, not just through text. In the context of ecocriticism, this means analyzing how visual imagery, sounds, gestures, and other modes interact with text to convey environmental messages. For instance, a documentary about deforestation might combine images of devastated forests, dramatic music, and expert interviews to evoke an emotional response and communicate urgency. 2. Analyzing documentaries. Documentaries often use a combination of video, narration, music, and graphics to tell stories about the environment. MDA examines how these elements work together to construct narratives. For example, a documentary on climate change might use visual evidence of melting glaciers, personal stories from affected individuals, and expert testimony to build a compelling argument for climate action. 3. Evaluating advertisements. Environmental advertisements often employ persuasive imagery and sound alongside text to promote eco-friendly products or initiatives. MDA analyzes how these elements create an overall message. For instance, an advertisement for electric cars might use images of pristine landscapes, upbeat music, and slogans like "Drive Clean" to emphasize environmental benefits and promote the product. 4. Exploring social media posts. Social media posts can blend text, images, videos, and even interactive features like polls or links. In ecocriticism, MDA might analyze how these multimodal posts contribute to public discourse on environmental issues. For example, a viral post about plastic pollution might use shocking imagery, hashtags like #BreakFreeFromPlastic, and links to petitions to raise awareness and encourage action. 5. Understanding the role of sound. Sound can play a powerful role in shaping environmental narratives, whether through the use of background music, natural soundscapes, or voiceover narration. MDA explores how these auditory elements interact with visual and textual modes to create meaning. For instance, a documentary might use melancholic music and the sound of waves crashing to underscore the urgency of ocean conservation. 6. Multimodal cohesion. MDA also looks at how different modes support each other to create a cohesive message. In environmental narratives, this might involve analyzing how text and imagery reinforce each other to convey a consistent message about issues like deforestation, pollution, or climate change. By analyzing the interplay of different communicative modes, MDA provides a comprehensive understanding of how environmental narratives are constructed and disseminated, revealing the ways in which these narratives shape public perception and influence environmental action. 5. Corpus linguistics. Corpus linguistics is a powerful methodology for studying patterns and trends in language across large collections of texts, corpora. In ecocriticism, it provides insights into how environmental discourse evolves over time and reflects societal changes. Here's how corpus linguistics can be applied in this field. 1. Pattern identification. By analyzing vast corpora, researchers can identify frequent words, phrases, and collocations related to environmental topics. For example, analyzing corpora of environmental reports, news articles, and social media posts could reveal common terms like sustainability, climate change, or biodiversity. Tracking their usage provides insights into which topics dominate environmental discourse. 2. Trend analysis. Corpus linguistics helps track changes in language usage over time. For example, the increasing frequency of terms like renewable energy or carbon footprint in recent years reflects growing public awareness and concern about environmental sustainability. This analysis can help identify shifts in public attitudes and emerging trends in environmental discourse. 3. Influence of specific events. Specific events, such as natural disasters, political decisions, or international conferences, can significantly influence environmental discourse. Corpus linguistics enables researchers to analyze how these events affect language use. For instance, examining corpora before and after the Paris Agreement might show an increase in terms like net zero emissions and climate resilience. 4. Contextual analysis. Corpus linguistics allows researchers to analyze the context in which environmental terms are used. This helps to understand the framing of environmental issues. For instance, analyzing the context in which deforestation appears in corpora might reveal different frames such as economic development, biodiversity loss, or indigenous rights. 5. Comparative studies. Comparing corpora from different regions, languages, or genres can uncover differences in how environmental issues are discussed. For instance, comparing environmental news in different countries might show variations in the emphasis on issues like air pollution or water conservation, reflecting regional environmental concerns. 6. Collocation analysis. By analyzing which words frequently co-occur with environmental terms, researchers can understand how specific issues are framed. For example, if renewable energy frequently collocates with investment or jobs, it indicates a framing that emphasizes economic benefits rather than just environmental concerns. 7. Public perception. Corpus linguistics helps gauge public perception by analyzing large collections of public discourse, like social media posts or online comments. For example, studying the language used in online discussions about plastic pollution might reveal public concerns, misconceptions, or support for specific policies. Through corpus linguistics, ecocritics can uncover patterns and trends in environmental discourse, revealing how language reflects and influences changing attitudes, societal priorities, and the global response to environmental challenges. 6. Narrative analysis. Narrative analysis is crucial in ecocriticism as it focuses on understanding how stories about nature and the environment shape perceptions, values, and actions. This methodology involves dissecting the structure, themes, and roles within narratives to reveal deeper insights into environmental discourse. Here's how it applies. 1. Structure of narratives. Narrative analysis looks at the structural elements of stories, such as plot, characters, and setting, to understand how they shape environmental themes. For instance, analyzing a novel with an environmental theme might reveal how the plot portrays nature as a character with its own agency, which can influence readers' perceptions of the environment. 2. Thematic analysis. Identifying recurring themes in environmental narratives helps understand the values and ideologies conveyed through storytelling. For example, examining themes like humans versus nature, environmental apocalypse, or harmony with nature in films can reveal how different narratives frame the relationship between humans and the natural world. 3. Role of characters. Characters in environmental narratives can personify environmental values or conflicts. Analyzing characters like environmental activists, corporate villains, or scientists in novels and films helps uncover how these figures influence perceptions of environmental issues. A story where the protagonist is a conservationist might inspire empathy towards environmental causes. 4. Narrative function. Narratives often serve functions such as educating, entertaining, or inspiring. Narrative analysis explores how stories function to influence environmental awareness or action. For instance, a folklore tale about the dangers of deforestation might serve to warn communities about the long-term impacts of environmental degradation. 5. Cultural and historical context. Narratives are shaped by their cultural and historical contexts. Analyzing environmental stories from different time periods or cultures can reveal shifts in societal attitudes. For instance, Comparing environmental novels from the 19th century to contemporary ones might show how attitudes towards nature conservation have evolved. 6. Symbolism and metaphor. Narrative analysis explores the use of symbolism and metaphor in environmental storytelling. For example, the metaphor of Mother Earth in literature can convey ideas of nurturing and protection, while ecological footprint symbolizes human impact on the environment, influencing how people conceptualize their relationship with nature. 7. Narrative perspective. The perspective from which a story is told can significantly influence how environmental issues are perceived. First-person narratives might create an intimate connection to nature, while third-person omniscient narratives can offer a broader view of environmental challenges. Understanding these perspectives can reveal biases or insights in environmental narratives. 8. Influence on perception and behavior. Narratives have the power to shape how people perceive the environment and act towards it. Stories that portray nature as a fragile, interconnected system may foster an ecological worldview, while those that depict it as a resource for human exploitation can justify unsustainable practices. By examining how stories about the environment are constructed and function, narrative analysis in ecocriticism uncovers the profound impact that storytelling has on shaping environmental perceptions, attitudes, and actions. 7. Frame analysis. Frame analysis is a crucial methodology within ecocriticism, especially when viewed through the lens of discourse analysis. It helps understand how environmental issues are constructed and presented to the public through various discourses. Here's how frame analysis applies in this context. 1. Defining framing in environmental discourse. Framing refers to how information about environmental issues is presented in media and public discourse, influencing perceptions and interpretations. By highlighting specific aspects of a topic while downplaying others, framing shapes how issues are understood and discussed. 2. Key components of frame analysis in ecocriticism. Identifying frames. Issue-specific frames. Frames are identified within specific environmental issues, such as global warming as a crisis versus global warming as a hoax. Frame elements. Frame analysis examines elements like metaphors, exemplars, or visual imagery that signal a specific way of understanding an environmental issue. Analyzing media discourse. News media. How newspapers and online media frame environmental issues can significantly shape public opinion. For example, framing climate change as a debate suggests that there is still scientific uncertainty, influencing perceptions of the issue. Social media. Social media analysis can reveal user-generated frames, reflecting grassroots perspectives on environmental topics. Examining policy and political discourses. Political speeches. Analyzing political discourse reveals how leaders frame environmental policies, such as emphasizing economic growth over conservation or vice versa. Policy documents. Policy documents can frame environmental issues through a technical or economic lens, affecting how policies are implemented. Cultural and regional variations. Cultural frames. Different cultures frame environmental issues based on local values and beliefs. For instance, a country heavily reliant on coal might frame the energy debate differently than one focused on renewable resources. Regional frames. Regional differences can reveal how local issues influence environmental discourse, such as water scarcity in arid regions versus deforestation in tropical regions. Impact of framing on public perception. Attitude formation. Frames influence how the public perceives environmental risks and solutions. For instance, framing pollution as a personal responsibility versus a corporate one leads to different opinions on who should address the issue. Behavioral influence. Framing can also shape behaviors, like promoting eco-friendly practices through a green consumer frame. 3. Application of frame analysis. Comparative studies. Comparing how different media outlets frame the same environmental issue reveals biases and agendas. Temporal studies. Analyzing framing changes over time shows how environmental discourse evolves in response to events like natural disasters or scientific findings. Critical evaluation. Frame analysis also involves critiquing frames that distort or misrepresent environmental issues, providing a clearer understanding of their real-world impact. Frame analysis in ecocriticism through discourse analysis offers insights into how environmental issues are communicated, the agendas behind these frames, and their influence on public understanding and action. 8. Ethnographic Discourse Analysis. Ethnographic Discourse Analysis, EDA, is a methodology that blends ethnography and discourse analysis to understand environmental discourse within specific communities. This approach provides a nuanced view of how environmental issues are discussed, perceived, and acted upon in real-world settings. Here's how EDA can be applied within ecocriticism. 1. Key aspects of ethnographic discourse analysis. Fieldwork and immersion. Participant observation. Researchers immerse themselves in the community to observe how environmental issues are discussed in everyday conversations, meetings, or cultural events. Interviews and conversations. Engaging in conversations or conducting interviews helps capture the language and perspectives used by community members. Contextual understanding. Cultural context. Understanding the cultural background of a community reveals how environmental discourse is shaped by local traditions, beliefs, and practices. Social context. Social dynamics, such as power relations and hierarchies within a community, influence how environmental issues are discussed and understood. Discourse analysis. Analyzing language use. Identifying the terminology, metaphors, and narratives used in the community to discuss environmental issues helps understand their framing and significance. Textual analysis. Studying documents produced by the community, such as newsletters, meeting notes, or social media posts, provides insights into the formal discourse on environmental matters. Understanding environmental engagement. Local practices. Observing how the community interacts with the environment, such as through conservation efforts or resource usage, provides insights into their environmental engagement. Narratives and values. Understanding the stories and values that shape the community's environmental worldview helps explain their attitudes and behaviors. Analyzing power dynamics. Who speaks and who listens. Identifying who controls the discourse in the community reveals power structures that influence how environmental issues are addressed. Voices and silences. Recognizing whose voices are included or excluded from the discourse highlights marginalized perspectives and potential biases. Longitudinal perspective. Evolving discourse. Observing changes in discourse over time shows how external factors like policy changes, economic shifts, or climate events impact local environmental narratives. Cultural adaptation. Understanding how communities adapt their discourse and practices in response to environmental changes provides insights into resilience and adaptation strategies. 2. Applications of ethnographic discourse analysis. Policy development. Insights from EDA can guide policymakers in creating environmental policies that align with local values and practices. Community engagement. Understanding the discourse within a community helps design more effective engagement strategies for environmental initiatives. Cultural understanding. EDA fosters a deeper appreciation of how culture shapes environmental perceptions and actions, aiding in cross-cultural environmental communication. By combining ethnography with discourse analysis, ethnographic discourse analysis offers a rich, in-depth understanding of how environmental issues are discussed, perceived, and acted upon within specific communities, providing valuable insights into the cultural nuances of environmental discourse. 9. Semiotic analysis. Semiotic analysis, a critical tool in ecocriticism, examines signs and symbols in environmental discourse to understand how cultural meanings related to nature and environmental issues are constructed. By analyzing the semiotics of logos, images, slogans, and other visual elements, we gain insights into how environmental messages are communicated and perceived. 1. Key components of semiotic analysis in ecocriticism. Analyzing signs and symbols. Visual elements, logos, images, and symbols are powerful conveyors of meaning. For example, a logo with a tree or a globe in green often signifies eco-friendliness or global environmentalism. Color and shape. Colors like green and blue are commonly associated with nature and water, while shapes like circles may signify unity or global focus in environmental contexts. Cultural significance of symbols. Cultural icons. Semiotic analysis examines how certain images, such as endangered species or natural landscapes, become icons representing broader environmental issues. Mythology and archetypes. References to myths or archetypal figures, like Mother Earth, add layers of cultural meaning that resonate with different audiences. Deconstructing environmental narratives, slogans and taglines. Analyzing slogans, such as reduce, reuse, recycle, reveals how concise language encapsulates complex environmental messages. Advertisements and campaigns. Environmental campaigns often rely on visuals and slogans that frame environmental issues in specific ways, influencing public perception. Interpreting media and branding. Corporate branding. Companies use eco-friendly branding to convey environmental responsibility. Semiotic analysis reveals how logos and branding influence perceptions of corporate environmentalism. Environmental media. Documentaries, films, and advertisements employ signs and symbols to frame environmental narratives in specific ways. Understanding public perception. Symbolic influence. Signs and symbols shape how people perceive environmental issues. A familiar recycling symbol, for instance, influences how individuals view waste management. Public engagement. Environmental organizations use semiotic tools to encourage public engagement, relying on recognizable symbols and slogans to mobilize action. Examining sociopolitical impact. Political symbols. Political parties and movements use symbols and signs to represent their environmental stances, influencing policy discourse. Social movements. Environmental movements employ symbols, such as the Extinction Rebellion hourglass, to convey urgency and demand action. 2. Application of semiotic analysis. Campaign effectiveness. Analyzing the semiotics of environmental campaigns helps assess their effectiveness in conveying messages and motivating action. Consumer behavior. Understanding how eco-friendly branding influences consumer behavior can inform strategies for promoting sustainable products. Cultural critique. Semiotic analysis provides a framework for critiquing how media and corporations manipulate environmental symbols for commercial or political gain. Semiotic analysis in ecocriticism helps decode the layered meanings behind environmental discourse, revealing how cultural, commercial, and political forces shape public understanding of nature and environmental issues through signs and symbols. Conclusion. Understanding the methodologies of ecocriticism in discourse analysis is crucial for uncovering the intricate ways in which language, imagery, and narratives influence our perceptions of the environment. Each methodology offers a distinct approach to analyzing environmental discourse, from identifying hidden biases in texts to revealing cultural meanings in signs and symbols. These methods are instrumental in providing a comprehensive view of how environmental issues are framed, discussed, and understood, ultimately influencing public perception and policy. Frequently asked questions. What is textual analysis in the context of ecocriticism? Textual analysis in ecocriticism studies written texts, such as literature and media, to identify environmental themes. It involves analyzing how nature and ecological issues are portrayed in various forms of written discourse, revealing underlying attitudes and ideologies about the environment. How does conversation analysis contribute to ecocriticism? Conversation analysis examines spoken language to understand how environmental issues are discussed in everyday conversations. It reveals how people talk about nature and environmental topics, providing insights into public perceptions and the language used to frame these issues. What is critical discourse analysis, CDA, in ecocriticism? Critical discourse analysis, CDA, in ecocriticism involves analyzing texts to uncover hidden ideologies, power structures, and biases regarding environmental issues. It aims to reveal how discourse shapes and is shaped by social practices, influencing perceptions of the environment. How does multimodal discourse analysis help in understanding environmental narratives? Multimodal discourse analysis examines multiple modes of communication, including text, images, and sounds, to understand how they contribute to environmental narratives. This methodology analyzes documentaries, advertisements, and social media posts to reveal how different media shape environmental discourse. What is the role of corpus linguistics in ecocriticism? Corpus linguistics uses large collections of texts, corpora, to identify patterns and trends in language related to environmental topics over time. This method reveals shifting public attitudes or the influence of specific events on environmental discourse by analyzing changes in language use. What does narrative analysis focus on in environmental discourse? Narrative analysis focuses on the structure and function of stories about nature and the environment. It examines novels, films, and folklore to understand how environmental themes are depicted and how they shape perceptions, values, and attitudes toward nature. How does frame analysis contribute to understanding environmental issues? Frame analysis identifies how media and public discourses frame environmental issues, influencing public perception. It examines different texts to reveal the frames used, highlighting varying perspectives on environmental matters and their impact on public understanding. What is ethnographic discourse analysis? Ethnographic discourse analysis combines ethnographic fieldwork with discourse analysis to understand how environmental discourse operates in specific communities. It involves observing how people discuss and engage with environmental issues in real-world settings to reveal contextualized insights into environmental language. How does semiotic analysis help in understanding environmental discourse? Semiotic analysis examines the signs and symbols used in environmental discourse to uncover the cultural meanings associated with nature and environmental issues. It analyzes visual elements like logos, images, and slogans to understand how visual language shapes environmental perceptions. What insights does textual analysis provide for environmental narratives? Textual analysis reveals how written narratives depict nature and ecological issues, offering insights into cultural attitudes and ideologies. It shows how literature and media contribute to shaping societal perceptions of environmental challenges. How does conversation analysis highlight public attitudes toward the environment? Conversation analysis highlights public attitudes by examining how people discuss environmental issues in everyday conversations. It uncovers the language and framing used to talk about nature, revealing the societal norms and values that shape these discussions. Why is multimodal discourse analysis significant in ecocriticism? Multimodal discourse analysis is significant because it captures the multidimensional nature of environmental discourse. By analyzing text, images, and sounds together, it provides a holistic understanding of how different media communicate environmental messages. How does corpus linguistics reveal changing trends in environmental discourse? Corpus linguistics reveals changing trends by analyzing patterns in large datasets over time. It identifies shifts in language use related to environmental topics, highlighting changes in public attitudes and the influence of key events on discourse. What can narrative analysis reveal about societal values toward the environment? Narrative analysis reveals societal values by examining how environmental stories are constructed and conveyed. It shows how these narratives shape and reflect attitudes toward nature, influencing societal perceptions and behavior. How does frame analysis affect environmental policymaking? Frame analysis affects policymaking by showing how different frames in media and public discourse influence public perception of environmental issues. Understanding these frames helps policymakers craft messages that align with or challenge prevailing narratives.